The wrestling world is exploding right now, and what we're about to reveal will shake everything you thought you knew about WWE's current power structure. Behind the curtain drama is reaching boiling point, and the decisions being made are going to reshape the entire landscape of professional wrestling as we know it. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button now because you don't want to miss a single update on these developing situations. Triple H is making moves that nobody saw coming, and Roman Reigns is finding himself in a position that would have been unthinkable just months ago. The game has been systematically positioning himself in a way that puts the tribal chief on the back foot, and sources close to the situation are saying this isn't just creative direction but something much deeper. We're talking about real backstage power plays that are affecting who gets pushed, who gets television time, and who gets buried in the process. Roman Reigns built an empire over the last few years as the head of the table, but now it seems like Triple H is ready to dismantle that empire piece by piece. The tension started building when creative decisions began going in directions that didn't favor the bloodline storyline the way many expected. Instead of continuing to build Roman as the untouchable force he's been portrayed as, we're seeing cracks in the armor, and those cracks aren't accidental. What makes this situation even more explosive is how it's affecting the rest of the bloodline, because Jimmy Uso just got turned down by WWE in a way that sent shockwaves through the locker room. Jimmy has been trying to negotiate certain aspects of his contract and his role within the company, but WWE management, specifically Triple H and his team, have been giving him the cold shoulder. The offer that was presented to Jimmy was so far below what he and his representatives expected that it felt like a deliberate message. This isn't just about money, though that's certainly part of it, but more about respect and positioning within the company hierarchy. Jimmy Uso has been one of the most consistent performers in WWE for years now, and his work alongside his brother G as part of the Usos tag team is legendary. They've had classic matches with practically every major tag team on the roster, and their involvement in the Bloodline storyline elevated them to new heights. But now, with the Bloodline story seemingly winding down, or at least transforming into something different, Jimmy is finding out that his value in WWE's eyes might not match his own assessment. The rejection Jimmy received isn't sitting well with a lot of people backstage, because it raises questions about how WWE values its talent, especially those who have been loyal soldiers for the company. Jimmy has never been the type to complain publicly or cause problems behind the scenes, which makes this situation even more frustrating for him and those who support him. There are whispers that Jimmy might start exploring his options when his contract situation allows for it, and if that happens, it would be a massive blow to WWE's tag team division. The timing of all this is suspect too, because it's happening right when Roman Reigns is dealing with his own issues with management. Some people are connecting the dots and suggesting that the way Jimmy is being treated might be a way to send a message to Roman about who really controls things in WWE now. If you can't get to the king directly, you go after the people around him, and that appears to be exactly what's happening here. LA Knight is dealing with his own set of problems, and the backstage heat he's generating is becoming impossible to ignore. Knight has been one of the most over superstars in WWE over the past year, with crowds going absolutely crazy whenever his music hits. You would think that kind of organic fan support would make him untouchable, but that's not how things work in professional wrestling. There are people within WWE's management structure who don't see LA Knight as a top guy despite what the crowd reactions suggest. The heat Knight is getting stems from a combination of factors, including concerns about his age, his in-ring style, and whether he can carry a main event program long-term. These concerns might seem ridiculous to fans who see Knight getting reactions that most wrestlers would kill for, but WWE has always had very specific ideas about what a main event star should look like, and Knight doesn't fit that mold for everyone in power. The situation with LA Knight is complicated by the fact that he came up through the independent scene and other promotions before getting his big break in WWE. There's still an old-school mentality among some decision-makers that views wrestlers who didn't come up through WWE's system as inferior or less trustworthy. Knight has had to work twice as hard to prove himself, and even with all his success, there are still doubters within the company. The backstage heat reached a new level recently when Knight reportedly pushed back against certain creative ideas that he felt would damage his character. Standing up for yourself can be seen as difficult or problematic in WWE, especially if you're not one of the chosen few who have that freedom. Knight walking that line between being an advocate for his character and being seen as someone who doesn't want to cooperate is a dangerous game. Other wrestlers have fallen out of favor for less, and the fact that Knight is willing to take that risk shows how much he believes in his own vision. What makes the LA Knight situation particularly interesting is how it contrasts with how other wrestlers are being treated. Guys who don't get anywhere near the crowd reactions Knight gets are being positioned higher on the card and given more opportunities. This has led to frustration not just from Knight but from other wrestlers who see the disconnect between what management says they want and what they actually do. WWE loves to talk about listening to the fans and giving them what they want, but when the fans are clearly telling them they want LA Knight in a bigger role and that message gets ignored, it creates cynicism throughout the roster. Knight isn't the first wrestler to deal with this kind of situation, and he won't be the last, but his case is especially glaring because of how undeniable his connection with the audience is. Bron Breakker is dealing with an entirely different kind of problem because recent reports indicate he's hurt and the injury might be more serious than initially thought. Breakker has been positioned as one of WWE's future top stars, and his physical style in the ring is a huge part of what makes him special. The problem with that style is it takes a toll on the body, and when you're going as hard as Bron does every single night, eventually something gives. The injury he's dealing with now is reportedly related to his shoulder or upper body area, and while WWE hasn't made any official announcements about it, the fact that he's been pulled from certain appearances tells you everything you need to know. This is terrible timing for Breakker because he was just starting to build real momentum on the main roster after his call-up from NXT. The concern with Bron Breakker isn't just about this specific injury but about whether his wrestling style is sustainable long-term. He works like a man possessed in the ring, throwing himself around with reckless abandon, and while that makes for exciting matches, it's also a recipe for injuries. WWE has seen this pattern before with other physical wrestlers who burned bright but burned out quickly because their bodies couldn't hold up. There's already talk within the company about whether Bron needs to modify his approach to ensure he has a long career rather than a short, spectacular one. The problem is that what makes Bron special is that intensity and physicality, so if you take that away, does he become just another guy? That's the dilemma WWE is facing right now as they try to figure out how to protect their investment while still allowing him to be the performer that got him to this level in the first place. The injury to Bron Breakker also creates a ripple effect through WWE's plans because he was being counted on for several high-profile programs in the coming months. Now those plans have to be reworked or scrapped entirely, which puts additional pressure on other wrestlers to fill the void. This is why depth in a wrestling roster is so important, because when someone goes down you need to have people ready to step up. WWE's roster is deep right now, but losing someone with Bron's unique skill set and positioning is still a significant blow. There's also the question of what happens with Logan Paul, because Bron was rumored to be involved in something with the celebrity-turned-wrestler, and now that might be off the table. Logan Paul's involvement with WWE has been a controversial topic since day one because traditional wrestling fans have mixed feelings about celebrities coming in and taking spots from full-time wrestlers. Logan has actually done better than most people expected in the ring, showing genuine athleticism and a willingness to learn the craft. However, his schedule is limited because he has other business interests, and that creates challenges for WWE when trying to book him in meaningful programs. The plan was apparently to have Logan work with someone like Bron Breakker who could carry him through a program and make him look good while also elevating himself in the process. With Bron hurt, that plan is in jeopardy, and WWE has to figure out what to do with Logan during his next appearance. The Logan Paul factor is interesting because WWE clearly sees value in having him around for the mainstream attention he brings, but there's growing frustration among full-time wrestlers who feel like they're being overlooked in favor of part-time celebrities. This isn't a new complaint in WWE, as the company has a long history of bringing in outside stars and pushing them ahead of the regular roster. What makes it particularly frustrating now is that WWE has so much homegrown talent that's ready for opportunities, but those opportunities keep going to people who aren't committed to wrestling full-time. Logan Paul is just the latest example of this trend, and while he deserves credit for taking his WWE work seriously, the fact remains that his presence takes away from others. All of these situations are interconnected in ways that might not be immediately obvious but tell a larger story about where WWE is right now as a company. Triple H burying Roman Reigns isn't happening in a vacuum, it's part of a larger shift in how WWE is being run under his leadership. The decision to turn down Jimmy USO is connected to the power struggle between the old guard and the new regime. LA Knight's backstage heat is a symptom of WWE still struggling with how to identify and push their stars. Bron Breakker getting hurt exposes the vulnerability of relying too heavily on a specific style of performer. Logan Paul being involved in these plans shows WWE's continued obsession with mainstream attention, sometimes at the expense of their core audience. The next few months are going to be crucial for WWE because these issues aren't going away on their own. How Triple H handles the Roman Reigns situation will set the tone for his entire tenure as head of creative. Whether Jimmy USO stays with WWE or looks elsewhere will indicate how the company treats its veteran performers. If LA Knight continues to face resistance despite his obvious popularity, it will prove that WWE still doesn't fully understand its own audience. How Bron Breakker recovers from his injury and whether he adjusts his style will determine if he fulfills his potential or becomes another what could have been story. And what WWE does with Logan Paul will show whether they've learned anything from past mistakes with celebrity talent. The wrestling business is built on drama both in front of the camera and behind it. What we're seeing right now is a perfect storm of backstage politics, creative disagreements, contract negotiations, injuries, and ego all colliding at once. For fans, this makes for fascinating discussion and speculation, but for the people actually living through it, this is their livelihood and their careers on the line. Every decision being made right now will have consequences that ripple out for years to come. Triple H is making his mark on WWE, and not everyone is happy about it. Roman Reigns is learning that even the tribal chief isn't immune to political games. Jimmy USO is finding out that loyalty doesn't always get rewarded the way you expect. LA Knight is discovering that crowd reactions don't guarantee opportunities. Bron Breakker is experiencing the downside of his high-impact style. Logan Paul continues to be a lightning rod for controversy just by existing in this space. These are the stories that will define this era of WWE, and we're watching them unfold in real time. The outcomes are uncertain, and that's what makes it so compelling. Will Triple H's vision for WWE succeed, or will pushing aside established stars like Roman Reigns backfire? Can Jimmy USO find a resolution that makes him feel valued, or is he destined to leave? Will LA Knight finally break through to the main event level, or will backstage politics keep him down? Can Bron Breakker stay healthy enough to reach his potential, or will injuries derail his career before it really gets started? These questions don't have easy answers, and that's exactly why we'll be following every development closely. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any updates as these situations continue to evolve, because things are changing fast and you won't want to be left behind when the next bombshell drops.